Hello, people. Welcome back to another episode. To be precise, we're on our 100th episode, and by we, I mean me, because it has very much been a solo journey that has took me to many different studios, and now we've landed in this place in the lovely land of Airdrie. If you've ever been to Airdrie, you'll realise that came with a hint of sarcasm. I'm not really one for celebrating these type of things. I've seen people posting like pictures that they've got balloons and all that because they've done 100 episodes. That doing 100 episodes means nothing to me, but I did see it as a opportunity to do a different kind of episode and do a wee Q&A and interact with the people who listen to this podcast. By the way, I've been getting quite a lot of like I've said before, it's hard to know who listens to the podcast because there's no messaging feature on like Spotify or Apple. You're like, even if you leave a review on Spotify, you're just clicking a 5-star button. I have no idea who lots of people are, but I've been getting more messages on Instagram, more people sharing the podcast on their stories and stuff, and it allows me to see who actually listens so I can speak to them. And this is what this Q&A episode is as well, like helping the people who listen to the podcast. So without any more chat, let's get into the questions, right? So we'll just get straight into this. What's the first one? These are questions I've put on my Instagram story. First one's, how do you deal with the stress of running your own business? I do think parts of running your own business now, I've now came across plenty of people that have like, let's just talk PTing, right? Because I don't run a fucking shop. Like, I have no idea what it's like to have 10 employees like doing pallets for me and putting stuff out on the shop floor. I don't know how to run those type of businesses, but say like an online coaching business or an in-person coaching business, I do definitely think some people's whether it's due to their upbringing or whatever, some people are more suited to it than others. For me, like when people say things like, did you not find it, like, were you not so scared to start your own business? Were you not like terrified of taking the risk? I found staying in jobs more risky and terrifying than not trying this. And I'm being genuinely serious. Like the thought of trying to work my way up a job and then like the boss changing, which I'd expect, because I've done about 10 different jobs, right? The thought of me getting a promotion and then the manager changes and then your job completely changes and it being awful, or just being told to do stuff that you know is quite pointless, that scares me more. I remember, and this didn't inflict my decision or anything, but I remember like my mum and dad ran pubs when we were younger, not like ran them as in owned them, just like they would become the managers of places and then try get them to make more money. They were on the bread line doing this. It was in London, so that also makes it sound like there were these two people that could turn around pubs. Absolutely not the case. We lived above the pub and we had fuck all. But I remember my dad, because my dad's actually quite switched on. They managed to get this pub that was like almost going bankrupt and got it to start making a pretty hefty profit, and he was told that he was going to get like whatever it was, a 15 grand bonus by the end of the year, and that was going to be our savings. And then the pub got bought over by another company, and he was like, yeah, this is what we'd agreed before. I've like well exceeded the numbers. And he was like, yeah, like I don't give a fuck that you've done that. And I wasn't the guy that told you were going to get a 15 grand bonus. So just not having control over my career or how much money I can make or things like that, just it's never worked in my head. Been in jobs where someone else is controlling how much I can progress doesn't work in my head. Like I really don't like it, and I just had quite a lot of awful experiences in jobs. I remember one of my first jobs, well, this is actually like my fourth job. I worked in a pharmacy for a while, And then within 3 months, I get moved to another one, and I was getting trained how to dispense prescriptions, so make them up and then give them out to people. And we had this manager, and she just like micromanaged me down at every single minor detail. She would like put a stopwatch on whenever I was making up a prescription. She said this should take you 2 minutes to make, then she'd put a 2-minute stopwatch on, and every 20 seconds she would ask me like how I'm getting on with it, and then she would be dead condescending to me, and she would basically just like pick at me the full time. And then I remember one of the area managers came in, and she was like, and I'd worked with her all day, and I would basically not do anything for someone I hated. I would just my brain's always been like that. Teachers in school, if I hated you, I was doing fuck all. If I liked you, I would probably be the best in it. Well, not the best. That sounded like, you know what I mean? Fucking hell. And like, the area manager came in, we were getting on really well. I'd smashed out loads of prescriptions or whatever. Look at me, big man, fucking dishing out all the fucking omeprazole. And that's a drug for heartburn, which is the only thing I can remember. And then she came in, and she done like a changeover with my manager. She was like, he's amazing, like he's so switched on for like a 19 or 20 year old. And you could see she was absolutely fuming, because 1 out of 10 people just absolutely hate me for some reason, and she was one of them. And that just always sat with me for ages. Like, my whole 8 or 9 hours of work every day was dictated by what this woman's mood was. So long story short is, this wasn't hard for me to transition to. I'd sort of like ran my own business before, doing freestyle and getting hired for jobs and doing workshops in schools. I think there's definitely, like, if you find this so overwhelming, you've been doing it for like 2 or 3 years, maybe you are more suited to a 9 to 5. But all of the sort of barriers are like not being able to switch off all the time don't bother me that much, and I would take it every day over all the other jobs I had. There's definitely like more. Don't let anyone tell you that like 9 to 5s are the worst and most horrendous thing ever. Sometimes they're the better. Well, I would actually say most of the time they're the better option for a lot of people. Even like PTs, sometimes not being fully self-employed and having like money that you're guaranteed coming in is better for how some people's heads work. For me, it's better to control everything for myself. That makes me sound like a control freak, but maybe I am. Right, on to the next question. What advice do you have for someone who struggles with tracking their food, I'm guessing? So there's 2 different things I would highlight with that. One is, tracking is hardest in the beginning. So if you've never nailed the habit of tracking for, let's just say, 8 to 12 weeks, right? It's so much more mentally fatiguing, because you actually have to think about everything. Like, oh, just 50 ml of milk. How many coffees do I have today? I can't remember. Oh, I don't even have scales. Oh, did I weigh that? I can't remember. But see, the longer you do it, you start getting into, or like for most of us, and with most of my clients, you start getting in a routine where you start eating mostly the same food. And that's the thing that's so good about it for most people. So you start having the same sort of breakfast. You start having the same sort of snack after breakfast. You start having the same similar types of dinners. And then it's less mentally fatiguing to go, oh, I've already saved that recipe, clicked it in. Oh, breakfast, I have the same thing every day. I just save it, and then it's just one tap instead of putting in all the ingredients. So there is merit to saying some of it's perseverance, and it'll get easier, just like anything. But then also, it's not for everyone. If you can do it to that point where you can reverse engineer what I just said, instead of focusing on tracking to get in that routine, come up with a high protein breakfast, come up with 4 high protein dinners, both of those being something that you don't like. My high protein breakfast, right? It's oats, Graham's yogurt, banana, and a bit of milk. Takes me 2 minutes to make. I love it. if I get bored of it, I just switch to oats for granola. Me and my missus wake up every single day. We both have the same sort of breakfast, and we both actually like we'll talk about like, I'm excited to eat this. So you want stuff that's quick and easy. You want it to involve as little thinking as possible. And then if you can get something like 2 fruit that you have a day, and just like you buy them and you always put them in like a fruit basket, and that's in the kitchen in sight. Apples and bananas, for example. If you can have same breakfast every day, 3 or 4 really easy dinners, 2 pieces of fruit that are in sight all the time, then that's a really good start. And then you can come up with, like, you can just play around with the rest of your food and not be too strict, and that's just your rigid plan that you kind of stick to. But yeah, like, you don't have to track. If you can get a rough, the good thing about tracking is it educates you about what you're actually eating. It doesn't have to be a forever tool. If it is a forever tool for you, then that's fine. I do intermittently go back to tracking when I feel like I'm going a wee bit fucking south with my food for a while, but it doesn't have to be something that you do for ages. Right. What's something you've changed your mind on since PTing? Lots of things. I think you come into it with a bias that people that struggle with their weight don't care about their weight as much as you do, or that these people are lazy. And I think, like, I would say I'm a good person, and I would, if you asked me about it then, I wouldn't have said it. I felt like that. But I think it's something you don't openly say, and it's like or more like a subconscious bias. And I like, doctors get slandered with this all the time, and there is definitely like weight stigma in medicine, right? Because I've had clients with terrible experiences with doctors, and I think a lot of like doctors are like on the spectrum and stuff. Don't cancel me for saying that, but I would say there is quite, like, I've met doctors, vets on the spectrum that don't really know how to word things in terms of like people's weight, and it can really harm the client. And I think what I've learned, like, from working with loads of people, I've yet to really work with a client that just like sits on their arse all day and like is eating Domino's pizza all the time and that sort of thing that people picture in their head. Yes, like, you do get clients that like will binge at the weekend and stuff, but mostly they set unrealistic expectations and they like try to restrict themselves so much, and all the ways that they usually give up because they can't find the balance. So they might have like weeks off the gym, but it's called, most of the time I find it's because they're trying to go too hard. Then they've also got loads of other stressors and things in their lives, like kids, like, I've got so many clients with stressful jobs, so many clients that I've maybe worked with for a wee, like, not that long, and went, you're like, I can't do anything for you, you work too much. I had a head teacher for a while that was working like 70-hour weeks. I think it was like a private school she was in, and she was just stressed to the nines. And she was up, but she's making 6 figures, right? I had to ask her, I was like, do you choose 6 figures, or do you choose like prioritizing your health? Is this 6 figures worth in 10 years having loads I didn't say it like this, but that's the way I would say it in my head, like, worth having health scares, because that was the way it was going. You try and not word things exactly like that when you're talking to clients. By the way, don't come out, and if you're a PT listening to this, don't come out and say it like that. But just even like open-ended questions where they can maybe start thinking about it that way. But I've had plenty of clients, I'm like, I've straight out came out and said, see, unless you change jobs or drastically change your hours or drastically change the responsibilities that you're in, like, that you've got on yourself, then you won't do this. Like, you absolutely won't. So I think definitely that's something I've changed my stance on. I've got rid of that subconscious sort of bias that people that are like maybe do struggle with their weight and stuff are lazy. Definitely there is people out there that are, right? There is people out there that are doing fuck all. But with people I've worked with, I haven't really came across it that much. It's more like overcoming all the obstacles they have and the unrealistic expectations they have. And also, I can't even have a bias for those things because they are all things I struggled with and everyone struggles with. So yeah, just fucking being a lot more level-headed with like, it's not always, not that it's not people's fault or responsibility, but like, I'm not better than them, if that makes sense. Now, next question. We're on 16 minutes, right? So I'm averaging about 5 minutes a question. Has the podcast been worth doing? I think that's based off because I talked about how much money it costs me. So I've spent about 20 grand on it, I think, so far, just by hiring out studios and stuff, which sounds disgusting, but that's over 2 years, right? So 10 grand a year sounds disgusting as well. Has it been worth doing? If I look at everything, so it's by no means the biggest podcast in the world. It's by no means the thing that's took my business off, like made my business take off the most. What I would say is, I think I've learned the most from doing a podcast. I think I've learned how to be able to speak about things without being worried about if I say something wrong, because on a podcast I can like speak about things without giving like blanket statements, without saying this is the way it is. And once you have an audience that listen to your podcast all the time, even if you say something that's a bit different to usual, they can start to understand when they go, right, he's got this, he thinks this way about that, thinks this way about this. I can understand why he thinks about that in that way. And then people can go, I don't really agree with him there, but they don't hate you for it like they do on short form content, because they can see that you just have opinions about things like every other human and you don't have to agree with them on everything. So it's allowed me to, the reason I wanted to start, I've not thought about this in ages, but the reason I wanted to start the podcast is because I got so sick of like posting short form content and feeling like everything was going to be scrutinized because people didn't agree with what I was saying, and you can't really give a nuanced opinion. So I think it's really helped me in that sense. It's got me all, like, I don't care about if people disagree with stuff in short form anymore, because I know that I have good morals, etc. In terms of clients, right, I don't get shit tons of clients from the podcast. I'd bet you, though, if I didn't have the podcast, I would get way, way less. Because if you're going to buy from someone and you see they have a podcast and you're not too sure about buying from them, if you go listen to their podcast and you like them, then that's going to get a lot of people over the line. I've also found that the more someone listens to my podcast, the better client they are. Like they almost know everything about how I'm going to work before they come on. So it's been really refreshing. Like every time I get a new client, and like they don't ask the really, really simple questions that loads of beginners ask. Not that that's a bad thing, but they just seem so much more willing to learn everything. So I found clients that come from the podcast are like so good to work with, and it's like much like quote unquote stronger leads. So has it been worth doing? It's hard to really calculate the numbers, but I don't really look at things that way. Like I would be happy for this podcast not to be that big forever, but if it helps me get better at my job and get better clients, I know that like I just don't care about. I've no need for my career to be like explode next year. I just want to get better at the job. I like the job, and I don't want to work 80 hours a week like I did in the first 2 or 3 years anymore. So yeah, it has been worth it, just not in the sense that like it's gonna change everything, but like that's people's advice on all of these things. Like it's not life changing, but yes, it's definitely been worth it. Any recommendations for beginner running trainers? Right, I'll do this quite fast. I've only tried on cloud runners. I had Nike React Pegasus or something as well, but I didn't buy them for running. They were just kind of running shoes and I already had them. They were all right. They're not, you wouldn't probably go to them to buy anyway. On Cloud Running, I thought were shit. Not shit, but like very underwhelming. I've done loads of stories about this just to see what other people were talking about, and I can remember them off the top of my head because I basically had them saved as bookmarks to buy for ages. So Hoka Clifton 9s people talk about all the time. Asics, Nova Blast, Free. I've also had the 4's good. The Nike Alpha Flies, Vapor Flies, or whatever you've probably seen. Saucony Endorphin Speed Free, which I just bought, but I can't use because I have an injury, which I'll go through in a minute. I'll go through my running chat in a minute, and I can't remember what the other one was. People were talking about Brooks, but man, they honestly the most virgin looking things I've ever seen. So are Hokas, so that's why I never got the Hokas. How do you start becoming a personal trainer? Any do's/don'ts? I'm going to come at this two ways, right? I'll come at it because I think they're just talking about how do you become it, which is a very easy answer. Just go get the level 3 PT course, and we all know it's shite. It's honestly terrible. You won't learn anything. Do's and don'ts with that. Don't do it online. It's one of the most annoying things in the world. You're relying on like a company that just care about you paying for the qualification. When I'd done mine, there's like not the practical stuff, like the written stuff. I sent it off, took them 3 weeks to mark, then they sent it back to me. They wanted it in a specific way, like a training program for someone, and they wanted it set up in a way that you would never in a million years do with someone in person, because they would hurt themselves, definitely. But they wanted you to use the systems, the training systems, and they wanted you to use all of them in one session. Like, so supersets, trisets, which is where you do 3 exercises back to back, dumb stuff, right? And I was like, that would be awful to do with someone, even with my little knowledge as a coach at the time. So I had to change it all. Then I had to send it back, wait 3 weeks for them to send me it back. So it took me like 9 months to do the online level 3 thing, and it was infuriating, and like they just don't give you feedback or anything. It was just awful. So just do it in person, even if it's more expensive. You'll lose money by doing it online purely out of like, if you can lose money from being annoyed, then that's what's going to happen. The time you'll waste basically being frustrated. Time is money, you know. So, and then I'll come at this question another way, right? Because I don't think that might not be what you want to do or what you want to think about when starting personal training, right? Do's and don'ts. Let's come at it that way. I think trying to get in person as soon as possible, and try getting a gym where there's other good coaches. I think that's something that's often overlooked as well. Like, I'll walk around Pure Gyms and JDs and that, and like there's James that you'll know from the podcast works in a JD, but all the JD, like most of the coaches, no offense to them, are terrible. Like, I'll just watch what someone's doing, not like sounds like I go in and just judge other PTs. But if you're doing an exercise and a PT's next to you and you're a PT and they're doing something so dumb, it's hard not to watch and listen to what they're saying. So trying to get in a gym where that's busy, that you can feel like you can definitely get clients, and get near good coaches. That also might mean doing 6 months in a like sort of more private gym where they pay you hourly and you can take like strength training classes or whatever. Not so much, you won't learn much doing like spin or whatever in terms of the type of PT I do anyway. But get like those sort of gyms can also be a great shout for learning. I've got a friend who's from Belfast that's out in Canada, and I keep seeing him, like he's in it looks like a really functional like CrossFit type gym, but they do a lot of like strength training and that as well. And I've been messaging him back and forth, and he just looks like he's learned loads already just from being around other good coaches. Don'ts, don't worry about followers, any of that sort of jazz. Don't worry about getting stuff wrong because you're going to. Also, don't even worry about, just always tell your clients, look here, I might not know that much about this, but from doing this with you, I'm going to learn. And if I still feel like I've not learned, I'll go away home and figure out what it is that I was trying to, like, how we can get you to do this exercise or what your problem is. And just come at it from a way that it's always learning. Like, I see PTs that have went down the social media route and they're still making the same videos 3 years later about fat loss, saying the exact same thing because they've been like chasing like viral videos. And I'm just like, whoa, you've learned nothing. Like, that's all you can talk about still. And I know that because my first year of coaching, like if you look at all my social media stuff, it was all about fat loss. And I was like well more researched than most people in nutrition and fat loss, right? But that's all I knew. Like, I knew training, like as in I knew the basic principles, but I didn't really know how to coach stuff. And I didn't really know how to apply some of the knowledge to my clients. And also, I hadn't done much different types of training. Like, I hadn't done strength phases. I hadn't really done proper, like, even bodybuilding type stuff. I hadn't done much running programs or anything. Like, I didn't know how to coach things that well because I hadn't. So you can see the coaches that still haven't done it, and I've just spent 3 or 4 years trying to go viral on social media, and I've really stunted their learning. So I would come at it from learn as much as possible and expose yourself to actual coaching as much as possible. And then if you do that, when it comes to like, maybe you will go through a phase where you really focus on social media, you'll have worked with that many clients, done that many different types of training, and got that good at explaining how things work to clients, that social media is so much easier and you don't have to like pigeonhole yourself into this whole thing where you just try and make viral videos about fat loss, because you know so much more than that and you can give so much more value than that. Right. Next question. Tips for getting back into the gym, fitness after a long time off when used to be a regular. Sometimes I think it's good to just be blunt. I do sometimes think to myself in coaching, should I just be blunt about this? Because I do tend to overthink things sometimes. Like, we're like, oh, what would be the best possible answer for this? But I remember going through a therapy with Paul, and he'd asked me to do NSDR, which is just like 6 minutes where you like think about your breathing, then think about different parts of your body. And then something else he asked me to do, and he asked me if I'd done it. And that was the only time I didn't do what he'd asked me to do. And I was like, nah. And he just went, see if your client was wanting to get better at squatting and you told them to squat twice a week and they didn't do it once, like, would you expect them to get better at squatting? And he didn't say it in a, like, PTs can talk like that and it can sound real cunty, but he came at it from a good place. And I was like, fair point. And then I started doing everything with him. So I think there's an element of just stop overthinking it and just, like, you can't outthink that. Like, just go. Maybe you fell out of love with it because you were trying to go too much. Maybe set lower expectations. But in all honesty, I can't really do anything for you apart from tell you to just go. Like, there's no point in me giving you this motivational speech. Just go. Like, just get through the gym doors. It'll be nowhere near as bad as you think. Next question. Why you not come back, Oz? Why am I not coming back to Australia? Done a whole podcast on this ages ago, so if anyone's interested in Australia and like what it's actually like out there, I've done one, why you should move to Australia if you're considering it, which is my most listened to podcast for some reason, and then one saying the truth about moving to Australia and why I moved back, which are very contradicting titles, but they were both how I felt at the time and they weren't that far apart. It's so hard to stay there permanently. Basically, for me, there's no option of doing PTing and staying in Australia, and I do not want to do any other job, and I don't want to work for anyone else. So I couldn't have one or the other. So really, when you break down the visas and my situation, it was keep PTing and not be able to live in Australia, or live in Australia and do something to, like, some other job to be able to stay in the country. And it would be looking at, for me, because I'm not a doctor, or like one of the things that would have been on the list, which is quite small, I'd be looking at things like construction, landing lucky in construction, landing very lucky in construction, because I can't do that type of work because I'm the least DIY-able person on the planet. Like, I get anxious if someone asks me to build a cupboard from IKEA. Like, I will honestly freak out. Or hospitality, which I'd done before. Funnily enough, when I went back, I'd done like 8 shifts in my old bar. I can't remember if I've spoke about this in the podcast before. Just because, see, with running your own business, being a PT, not so much when you're doing in person, but see, online sort of work, you do sort of like fantasize about easier times when, like, I was back. Like, I remember I was talking about the jobs. The only job I ever actually liked doing was bartending, because when managers told me to do something, it didn't really seem like it was that deep. Like, clean the glasses, fine, whatever. And it would be some guy that I'd been out the night with before taking care. Like, so I was like, I don't even care what you say to me anyway. So the bartending stuff I did fantasize about doing again, because it was such a laugh, and like, you meet so much more people, and it was a lot more social, and parts of my personality are very much like, I'm very much extroverted, and I did enjoy that. But when I went back to it, I had like a 12-hour shift, and for the first 2 or 3 hours I was like bamming up customers and stuff, and I was like, this is class. Then my back started getting a wee bit sore from standing up, and some customer was a wee bit rude to me, and I was only going to do like 2 or 3 shifts a week at the weekend. And then I looked at my watch and I was like, I've got 9 hours left of this. And I was like, I don't think I think I've been viewing this with rose tinted glasses. I forgot what 12-hour shifts in hospitality were actually like. Yeah, it's fun as fuck sometimes, and I love winding people up, but it's definitely not the dream whatsoever. What was this question again? Why you not come back to church? So yeah, basically I had no option to stay there that I wanted to do. There was whatever sacrifice I would have to make to stay there wasn't worth it. And to be honest, since I've came home, I've not thought about it at all, really. Like, I've not missed it. And the first time I came back, so I lived there for 2 years, and the time I came back after that, I was honestly distraught. I actually went for a breakup and moved home from Australia. Well, was forced to move home from Australia at the same time, and I couldn't get back out. And the breaking up with Australia felt more like the breakup. Like, the symptoms of that was way worse than my actual breakup. Like, I felt so much sadness for the country Australia and not so much for my ex at the time, which sounds a bit fucked up, but that's the truth. Right, next one. What's your main source of getting clients? This has changed over the years. Right now, it's from doing free sessions. It's kind of hit or miss with free sessions. Sometimes I get people who come in, and as soon as they come in, because I work with mostly beginners, they might actually be better at lifting than my ideal client. But I try to come at that from, like, I'm still going to give this person as much value as possible. Might be like a deadlift or something like that, and just doing a full hour-long workshop on a deadlift, because I've now taught about 200 people how to do a deadlift, pretty much from scratch, or even people that have done it for a while but haven't been taught how to do it properly. Sometimes those people still come on as clients, but it just gets me so much better as a coach. It builds my confidence so much. There's actually a skill to, like, there's an art to getting people who want to do free sessions as well. And that's my main source right now. I've done things like a weekly offer, where, because most coaches, and myself included, would do like 12 weeks of coaching up front, it can be hard for people to want to commit to that, especially if it's online. I've never met you in person. So the weekly offer is a more expensive option, but they can then move to monthly after. I don't believe in cutting down your coaching prices. I've got loads of expenses coming out my ears, and I've been doing this 4 years. The idea of doing coaching cheaper would just make me think, why on earth would I make it cheaper when I spend so much time trying to get good at it so that I give my clients a good service and I know as much as possible with them? So I think lowering your prices is probably one of the worst decisions you could make. My prices aren't through the roof, and I charge what I feel comfortable charging, and every year it kind of goes up a bit. But yeah, the weekly offer, because sometimes it's it's a better buy-in, but it's not cheaper. It's just weekly, instead of paying 12 weeks up front. And then I get less from like Instagram and stuff. I'm gonna go for a phase again where I probably really try grow things, but not to grow the things, so that I can grow my email list, just to once again make my business feel a bit safer, a bit more comfortable. When you get like 1,000 people sign up to your email list, you're like, I'm probably going to get quite a lot of them as clients over the next couple of years. So instead of it being Instagram and then Instagram's algorithm changes and people don't see your posts as much, people are always going to be able to see your emails. So I've got quite a lot from email list as well. But yeah, 3 sessions mostly. How would you suggest a beginner gets into running? So I'm going to answer there was another question about running, which I'm going to answer soon because I've basically quit running. I think I'm going to quit. Got an injury. I'll go through that in a second, but we'll answer this question first. Beginners getting into running, man, slow. Go as slow as possible with the amounts of runs, with the pace of the runs, and with your expectations, right? People go running and just try run as fast as they can, and it's the best way to get injured. I'm injured from it, and I done this the quote unquote smart way, and I'm not being cynical about it. Like, this has been my advice to people from the start, from when I've started running. I've got loads of questions about it. If you went on my Strava, you would see that I started with like 5Ks, then a 6K, then a 7K. Then the next week after that, I maybe went 5K and 7K. And there was never like, I never added double the miles or anything like that. I never went from 1 run to 4 runs. It was all built up really, really slowly, and it was all done at a really slow pace. Didn't do one fast run for like, I don't know, like 3 months. Even while there's this whole thing about zone 2, right? I don't think you need to worry about doing zone 2 training too much, because for me, most people that are going to have to do that will have to run and walk and then run and walk if they want to stay in zone 2 as a beginner. And that can just be really demoralizing. Whereas if you just run and accept that you might be in zone 3 or zone 4, but you're really trying to go slower and try to focus on being able to hold a conversation, and after a few weeks you might be able to do that, you're probably going to get the same benefits from coming at it that way. But just don't park your ego. It's not worth getting injured, and so many people are getting injured. So I bet you physios are making more money this year from all the high rocks and running trends, because from what I can see, people are not parking their egos at all. So yeah, think about it this way. Have a do no harm approach. You'll improve just by slowly upping your mileage, like slowly. You don't even have to run faster in the beginning. And yeah, like once you've got 4 or 5 months in the bag of like consistent running, and you're just running a bit more miles each week, you start looking at doing splits, start looking at maybe running some events and stuff like that, or even at least 3 months. But for the first 3 months, no fast running, just slow, build up the mileage, and don't be a tit with it. Right. Where's this one about you? So how did you start to enjoy running? I absolutely hate it. Right. So I've learned a lot about myself since I started running. I find it difficult to enjoy exercise unless I know I'm getting better at it. So I'll go. So this injury I've got, it could be a stress fracture on my metatarsal. By the way, it's like a 2 out of 10 pain. It's not sore. It's not been sore. It's just been there. So when I run, I feel like I altered my running a bit and stopped putting pressure on the side of my foot when I was running. And that's not how I've got the problem. That's how I've tried to stop it from being sore. It's sorer if I take my shoe off and walk like across a floor. But it's not actually that sore. I just know I shouldn't continue to run on it because it stayed there for like a month, and I thought I just bruised like the side of my foot by like standing on a stone or something, or like running on a stone. But nah, it's an actual problem. So it's coming from my left quad, I think, and I've had problems with that before. So I need to strengthen that. I need to work on, can't remember what she called it. Basically, where you turn your foot in the way in movements, and then also strengthening my glute and stuff. Yada yada yada, all the same sort of stuff that you learn when you go to physio. It's usually the same problems that crop up, with me anyway. But I didn't go too fast, too quick or anything. Done it really slowly, and it's probably just due to an imbalance I already had, and then the running is like it would have cropped up in lifting as well. Probably just wouldn't have been a stress fracture or whatever, or sore joints or sore metatarsal. It would have shown up in another way. I had IT band syndrome before, and that was due to like similar issues. I think. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a physio, but when I say, the reason I'm saying all that is I didn't actually really start to enjoy it. I had runs where I just could see how much I'd improved, and then I'd get a buzz out of that. But if I'm honest with you, like going an hour long easy run after like 3 or 4 months when I'd seen the most improvement, and it was then like really tedious improvement, and like I was finding it hard to keep up in mileage or keep progressing ever so slightly because I was also working and trying to do other things. I was that last little bit to improve was such tedious improvement that was also pushing me so close to like just burning out in general that I just kept on like getting up to a certain amount of miles and then feeling horrendous after it. Just feeling beat up mentally and physically. And I was just kind of like, I'm just really doing this because a lot of people are like doing different styles of training now, and I want to be a bit of a better coach, so that when people come to me and go, I want to run and lift, I've ran and lifted, so I know what it feels like. That's the only reason I wanted to do it. And I think I might at one point still, I've learned enough about running and I know what my capabilities are to do that. It was a sub 19 5k I wanted and a sub 40 10k. I think I could bash that out in 12 to 14 weeks of training if I wanted to, and I wasn't as heavy as what I was when I started last time. I was 90 kilos. That was half of the problem. That's like 12 kilos heavier than the first time I started running. So yeah, learning to enjoy it, putting on podcasts, getting decent music, running with other people, doing races so you have a reason to run. But for me, I have no real advice for you learning to love it, because like me, you might not love it. I've definitely learned to tolerate running and not hate it, but learning to enjoy it, I don't think I do enjoy it, and I don't think there's anything I can really do to change that. Our 60 to 90 minute easy runs, stuff like that will be the staple you improving. It's not very fun for me, so I don't have, maybe not the answer you want, but that's the truth. Next one. How do you build confidence to speak to a camera? So I don't even think you have to post the videos you make on social media. If you're a PT, think about the questions your clients ask you and then just make a video about it. Try and make it more engaging. But I think the speaking to a camera thing will just be repetition. I've just recently been on James and Dale's podcast to speak about social media in general, and I give a bit more specific tips. I'm also very cynical, as you can probably imagine, about going down that route anyway. But there's like obviously skills to getting people's attention, keep people's attention, being able to tell a good story, being able to explain things really well, being able to sorry, I just dropped my phone. Being able to take complex topics that people don't understand and making them simpler. But when it's actually just like you're nervous in front of the camera, just do it more. Commit to. I see people doing these challenges, like talking to the. Sorry, that was disgusting. I just done a weird hiccup burp. I think there's more coming. You see people doing these 30-day challenges where they talk to their story. I think stuff like that's actually quite good. Like, you'll talk absolute shite, but it'll get you over the fear of talking to the camera. I don't think there's any other. Well, I don't not think there's no other way to get over that fear than to just do it. Even with the podcast, right? I'm even hyper aware right now that I'm rambling a wee bit and I could do this a little bit better. And like, I think the next 20 minutes will probably go better because I'm aware of those thoughts. But that's all came from doing podcasts, then listening to me speak back. So even stuff like that, like I'm 100 episodes into the podcast now. If you went and listened to my first 10, I've never done that, by the way, but I think it would be terrifying. And when you listen to like me 200 episodes in, I'll be 10 times better. So I think just accepting you're going to be shite as well. You're going to be awful at speaking to a camera. And the only way you're going to get better is to do it. Again, not too complicated, that advice, but just do it. Right, this one doesn't really make much sense, but I'll break it down because I think I know what it means. How can we bring the pillars of the fitness multi-level marketers crumbling down? I think he's just basically saying, how can we destroy like all of these business mentorships and gurus that are ripping people off? We can't. I think they're here to stay. Just like all rip-off merchants are here to stay, and if they do go bankrupt or they do go out of business, there'll be another one. I think it's just building awareness, because the more I talk about these sort of things, and then I have people in my DMs telling me like, oh, I got ripped off by this like business mentorship, and then I also got ripped off with this one. I'm like, so you got ripped off with that one, then you bought into another one. That's, you probably have an unrealistic expectations of how much you can achieve as a coach early on in your career, and you've been sold that you can make 10 grand a month, or you should, because you can. Like, I could do it next month. I would ruin my life doing it, but I could work every hour of the day and make, and like sell 12-week coaching, up my prices and just make 10 grand, make fuck all the next month, right enough, but I could do it. So the best way to explain why people fall for these things is, like, coaches have the same problem their clients have with how much weight they can lose. Like, people will fall for and coaches sometimes do their marketing like this. Clients will fall for things like lose 30 pounds in 30 days, or like just insert whatever number you want. But then coaches are falling for make 10 grand within 10 grand a month within 90 days, or become a 6-figure coach. They're falling for the exact same things. So I do start to have less and less sympathy, because if you keep doing the same mistakes without learning from it, then yeah, they are preying on your insecurities, but you need to work on your insecurities. And ask yourself why you're still back. Like, I know people that have honestly bought into like 7 or 8 different memberships, and they'll get really annoyed when I talk about it. Like, you're triggered about my opinion about business mentorship, so that there's a reason for that. And I don't tend to reply to these sort of things, but I'll have PTs quite often like coming at me in my DMs for just honestly speaking about what I think about these things. And I'm like, man, that says more about like how triggered you are, because sometimes I've been triggered by things, and usually it's because of my own insecurities about something. Right, what time are we on? 51 minutes. I don't know. I think we've got another question. Yeah, last one. When are you going to have James and Dale back on the podcast? They were my favourite episodes. I went on their podcast. I don't know if it's out yet, but it'll be out soon. So Bulletproof Mindset is what their podcast is called. That may be one of the best episodes we've done. It was informative about social media, stuff that I've maybe not fully put out there. I've like touched on before. I will have them on soon. I'm trying to get a little deal with them where they come on mine once a month, both of them, because I know a lot of people tune into those podcasts, and a lot of it's pure shite that we're talking. They are some of the best episodes with either of them or the both of them. If you're looking for new episodes to listen to, I would go back and listen to a few of them. Some are informative, some are absolutely not informative at all. But yeah, I'm genuinely looking to just find like 5 people that I can get back on the podcast every now and then anyway, because I don't really have the time to go and get new guests all the time with running a business. And actually, like, I'm a coach that's still working one-on-one with people, and I don't want to move away from that yet, and I enjoy doing it. So I'm not a content creator firstly a content creator with businesses on the back end of it. I'm a one-on-one coach, online and in person, which is very time consuming and energy consuming, and I have social media to help me promote that. But that's on the back burner, and I've put it on the front burner a few times, and it's just made my business not go as well as what it should be. So I want to have people like that so that I can get them on. And then I also want to do episodes like I done last week, where I can just react to certain things on the internet and have a bit more of a laugh, so that this podcast isn't too hard and doesn't become my main focus, but it can still maybe grow a wee bit, or help me grow my email list and stuff, or just help me get clients over the line that were maybe on the fence about coming on coaching. But yeah, thank you very much for your time listening to that. Hundreds of episodes down. I did have wee thoughts about maybe quitting the podcast and focusing on YouTube and stuff, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I still enjoy doing it. I still enjoy learning. I still enjoy getting on different types of people, and I just like it. Like, I like podcasting, and I think you can teach people way more, even if you're never going to get loads of people to listen to it anyway. So thank you very much for anyone that's listened to me chat utter shite, and I'll see you in the next episode.